Aloha! Welcome to the 18th episode of the 10th series of the Temple of Surf, the podcast. Today with us, surf photographer Brown Cannon. We discuss about his latest book, Surf, Surfboard, Surfers, and much more. Aloha, Mr. Cannon. Welcome to the show. Where are you today?
I am in Bend, Oregon.
Wow, fantastic. So how is it going over there? Summertime?
Yeah, summertime. It's a little smoky right now. The fires are kind of burning a bit. The surf is flat though. It's always a little flat here in Bend, Oregon.
Okay.
But I get out to the coast quite a bit. I was out at the coast, the Oregon coast, actually, yeah, just several days ago, and surfed for 3 days with my son and a friend of his.
Okay, but that's what matters, right? Family first.
Absolutely, family's good.
Yeah, exactly. Even if the waves are small, important thing is like to be with your son and the friends, and then everything is.
It's true. And the Oregon coast in the summertime, the waves can actually be really great. You're not battling the really big, scary surf all the time. And as long as the winds are good, you can find little gems.
Fantastic. That's good. That's good. Today we're gonna talk about many things. We're gonna talk about your book, North. We're gonna talk about surf photography. But the first question I ask everyone on this show is, in your opinion, what is the most important thing in surf?
So I think for me, the most important thing in surfing is connection. In a multitude of facets. I think I'd say as humans, we crave that sense of belonging and feeling connected to a community of people. Um, I would say many of my best and deepest friendships have been born in the waves. And so when you feel a part of a lineup, I don't think there's anything more satisfying than that.
Yeah.
And then there's the aspect of connecting with nature and the energy of the water. It grounds me. It makes me present. It enables me to forget about things on land. And I find sometimes too that connection with myself through surfing also. Some of my most creative ideas, I think, come during a surf session or, kind of in those moments when my mind is wide open.
Yeah.
And the ocean's a place to build confidence. So I think connection is the word that comes to mind.
And it's fantastic the space that surf generates in our mind. The surf generates in our mind. It's true that many times I out there in the lineup, when just like waiting for the moment to surf, there's space for ideas, which is
It happens for me a lot while I'm surfing. It happens when I mountain bike. It's just as soon as I disconnect from all of the responsibilities on land, I think that's the time the mind opens the most.
Yeah.
The other thing that I just love is that notion that I can sit here in Bend, Oregon, and know that if I hop on a plane and fly to the North Shore for a swell that is coming, and you paddle out at a very specific time to a break that you usually go to, you're going to end up surrounded by all of your people.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be there. And so that's the magnetism of the ocean and the water and surf that I love the most, is that sense of camaraderie and all showing up for the same reason.
Yeah. Plus, it's a community that supports each other. It goes beyond, just like a bunch of friends that are surfing together. It's really like support in the business, support to the family, support anything that can be given. Usually, surfers are good people. Yeah, there are like crazy surf stories, of course, but people that like to help each other, and that's what Aloha at large means, no?
Right. The notion of ohana and family, and your family extending beyond bloodline family to the people that you meet in the water and elsewhere in your life, that you almost consider to be as close as family that you were born into.
I have a lot of question about you as a surfer before surf photography, but I just wanted to go back to your, since we talk about Hawaii, to your book North, that has been, you just told me before the interview that has been published by Italian people, which I like.
Yeah, Damiani. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm so lucky that you look for all a publishers. Sometimes it obviously takes a long time to find the right publisher, but in the end, you're really, in my mind, looking for one relationship. And I got really lucky that Damiani happened to be interested in the project, and they ended up giving me a lot of freedom to choose page sizes and subjects and names of titles and the scale of the book. Everything kind of was in my hands. And so it was a really amazing relationship. It continues to be.
So let's explain to the people that are listening to us. The book is about North Shore, right? So Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, the book essentially is a project that is focused strictly on the 7 mile stretch of the North Shore of Oahu, from Kaena Point to Cavella Bay, and all of the little rocky nuances in between. But, while it started originally as a project about photographing big wave surfers, it evolved much further beyond that and became more about the entire community of people and representing people of all ages and surfers of all types and water photographers and surfboard shapers, and really just trying to understand that place in a more intimate way.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's not just like a picture of somebody taking a tube or performing like a pro surfer. Is a people's book, right? So it's
Yeah. Yeah. First and foremost, a book for the people. I mean, I believe that photography is really meant to document, you know, people and places in time so that we can look back and remember those particular moments and windows of time. And so that's what this book really does. It's kind of a deep dive into the lives of these people at a very specific time in Hawaiian surfing history. And I lucked out because lots of really incredible things happened over the course of the time that I photographed this project. A lot of which you never know going in what the next 5-6 years is going to bring. But that's the beauty of photography. You put your foot out there and kind of let it unfold.
Yeah, because like I mean, there is a stereotype, well, let's say, for the man on the street, that common man that says like, okay, photography is very easy. I take a couple of photo, I invite a couple of people in the studio, I wrap it up, I do some editing or post editing, and then the book is released. While it's not like that. Every photographer, every surf photography book or any book about photography is the work of years, no?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think people often ask, well, so much has been documented about the North Shore. Why choose that place? But when I spent all that time over the years on the North Shore, surrounded by many, many talented, incredibly talented photographers, what you realized, or what I realized in the end, is that everybody's perspective is incredibly unique. And so while we're all shooting somewhat of the same kind of subjects and landscape and in the same environment, our focus, our intentions are all so different that we can each publish a book and have it be really unique to our own perspectives. And so I just, I for the last 25 years have been a travel photographer, shooting editorial stories for magazines kind of all over the world, really. And so this is a personal project that I've had kind of in my back pocket that's been kind of ongoing for the last 25 years, knowing that at some point I probably would publish a book of some sort, but never really knowing what shape that would or form that would take. And it was just the right time. I think COVID slowed down my a lot of my travel expedition photography and gave me a minute to focus on a project like this that was really important and personal. And so, yeah, I think that's a lot of why it got going when it did.
In Italian, we say you take the word out of my mouth. I don't know if it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Because one of the questions that I ask every surf photographer is how important is the perspective? And
Hmm.
the answer is essential, because as you said, it changed completely. Like two person at the same place with similar equipment or the same equipment can have a totally different photo because of the perspective, right?
Yeah, well, like I've always believed, like, if I ever was a teacher, that would be a big part of the point of what I would always try to get across. If you give 10 people the same camera and tell them to literally take photographs of the same subject, everybody's going to come out with a completely different result. And part of it is your eye, part of it is just how tall you are, how short you are, whether you crouch down when you shoot, what type of lens you're choosing or using. But then for me, because I grew up, with parents with a dark room, I think a lot of the final product ultimately comes in how you treat the images after you photograph it. Half of it's shooting for me, and half of it's like the creative process in kind of selecting the way that you treat those images, the papers you choose, the range and the tones of the print, the dodge, the burns, like all of that. Even though I'm using a computer now full time, I'm still treating these images in many ways like I was in the darkroom. And so that's again back to your point of perspective. Part of that perspective is our eyes. We're all unique. We see things differently. We're shooting and triggering that shutter at different moments. But then there's the perspective of like, what do you see as the final presentation?
Yeah. I like the aspect that you were just saying, about selecting the paper. So it's not a job only, because normal people that maybe will think like, okay, it's just like a Lightroom or editing of a digital picture that is totally different
Yeah,
years ago, right? But it's really like the artist, like you want that your picture look perfect, also when they are like printed and not just the scroll down on Instagram or a social media thing. It's just
right.
that is the true part of being an artist. It's like making sure that the object, that in this case is of photography, brings the somebody that would look at it in another dimension.
Right. Yeah, I mean, every time I shoot a job, the goal really is to come back with images, personal images that I think are compelling enough that people might want to put a few of those up on the wall. And so that's always kind of been my focus. One thing, I think with a lot of emerging photographers who are younger, there's a tendency to shoot a lot and then throw their stuff on the computer and then kind of see what the computer can do to their images for them. And, from my standpoint, because I spent thousands of hours in a darkroom, when I go out with my camera, even if it's digital and I'm shooting, obviously all those files are color files, but the second I shoot a specific image, I can kind of tell whether that's going to be an image that I'll print in black and white or an image that I'll print in color, whether I'll apply a certain filter, like filtration. When you're shooting in black and white with a red filter, the complementary colors go dark, so the blues of the skies go really dark, and then it just transitions as you're switching filtration down to, say, a yellow orange or a yellow filter, green filter. And so all that stuff is already kind of happening in my mind. So usually, well, when I shoot an image, I kind of have a sense of how it's going to translate into the final print in the end. But I just like that part of the process
Yeah.
a lot. And there's nothing better than making the print, even though it's not in the dark room. and the magic isn't quite the same when the print's coming off the printer in the dark room, or my office or studio here, and it's a big 40 by 60, and it has all of the tonalities and the depth, and the beauty of these incredible papers that are now available. Yeah, the feeling's the same.
$1 million question, but do you think that technology in the maybe maybe AI uh, is gonna disrupt even more the the profession, not the job, the profession of being a photographer or a surf photographer in this case? Or do you think that staying true to ourselves and doing the things properly still will make a difference between what is going to be out there in the next 3 to 5 years, if not early?
It's a really interesting question. I'm kind of pondering kind of the impacts of AI on my career, everyone's career in the creative business. I think that historically, technology has always, like for me, taken time to get used to. When I started photography, I got out of Art Center College of Design in Pasadena in 1998 in the fall. People then were still shooting slide film, but it was right at the very beginning of the transition to negative film, negative color and black and white. And so when I got out of school and I started shooting for my first assignments for, say, Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast, and I was submitting the edit, I would get the print order back, and then I would spend the next week in my black and white darkroom or going into the city of San Francisco and printing my color work as well. Then you move from there, and all of a sudden things start to go digital. And I held out as long as possible, but then I knew eventually I wouldn't be a photographer if I didn't make the transition, because people just wouldn't hire me anymore.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing was shooting both. I was shooting film, and then I was shooting digital. And the goal ultimately was to have the digital and the analog work sit side by side in some of these stories, and for people not to even know what was what. Because I didn't want digital to just all of a sudden change my style or feel of the photography that I was shooting. And so I transitioned slowly, and then eventually, definitely made my way to the digital world. I was shooting Canon when that happened. And now with the advent of AI, it's an interesting thought, because, for example, I also shoot a lot of horse culture, and I'm thinking specifically about this one image that I have that has this herd of running horses running across a big wide open landscape with an incredibly dramatic sky. You can go into AI now and say, herd of 50 horses running left to right, black and white, stormy sky, lightning bolt, whatever you want, and you can come up with images that would probably match anything that I've done with analog. But I don't know. I mean, it's fabricated. You also don't have the story behind it. Like I have the story that I can say what it was like driving 70 miles an hour across the prairie with some guy in a four-wheeler, and I'm shooting out the side of that thing, and the feeling of the horses and listening to the sounds. And you don't get that when you're telling your computer what to do. It's so, I think I see AI as being another tool, and I think it'll enable a lot of people to feel creative, which I think is a great thing. I mean, in some ways, it's like the cell phone. The cell phone turned everyone into a photographer almost overnight.
Yeah.
But people crave that. People crave the ability to be creative, and those tools will allow them to do that. And there will be room, I think, for everybody. I think it will just take a little time to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, humble opinion, is like, okay, we shall embrace technology and we shall not reject technology, because anyway, sooner or later, like you said it yourself, you started with analogical and then you end up with digital, right? And now maybe things will shift to AI or other things. Nevertheless, this provided that this doesn't destroy what has been built until now.
Right.
All the surf photographer or video makers, not only surfers, we can talk about at large. But since this is the temple of surf, then obviously we talk about surf photographers out there. It's like it would be a pity just to say, okay, like from one image of I don't know, Carissa Moore in Hawaii, then you can do all riding a tube. You can do all the tubes of the world and the same image, and that would kind of be super easy. And people at the end, they look at the Instagram, they don't have so much attention on what has been real and what not.
Right.
People will do, but that will be not enough to sustain the salaries and the cost linked to a profession. As I said, not a job, a profession that is super relative and super important for the world of surfing. We go back from
Right.
the 1960s, seven. If there were no photography, we would not be able today to dream about what, I don't know, Greg Knoll or Johnny Cabell or Mickey Minute were doing like in those years. So
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say, I was thinking about AI just while you were talking a little bit. AI will be really disruptive, say, for advertising and maybe even fine art, right? Because those images don't necessarily have to document anything specific in time. But I've always wondered, how do photographers sustain a career over a long period of time? And, I've been doing this for 25 years now. And I think my answer is that the world is always changing around us. And that's the reason we keep getting hired to document these people and places, because the skylines change, people get older. And so photography needs to exist for that reason, because it is the way that we kind of see, connect, document time as it goes by. AI can't do that. And so, again, just thinking out loud, I think it just, the fact that the world is always changing is a little bit of what creates job security, I think, in our world.
yeah, definitely. And like we go back to perspective in a certain way. When I had an interview with Jimmy Matico recently, he told me like, Alessandro, for me, I will ask you what is the most important thing in surf photography, so be ready. I thought it's like one of the most important things for me is to keep shooting not only what's happening on the wave, but also what's happening on the beach. And so
Right.
we were talking about the book that he did about the years of Tom Curren and the early years of Tom Curren. So he was shooting the beach, and in the beach, sitting with Tom Curren, there was Almeric. And both Tom Curren and Almeric, what he was telling me, they were like at the early stage, of what became a world champion on one side and Channel Island on the other side, so-called on the other side. And documenting the beach, nobody was like maybe thinking about documenting the beach. And from documenting the beach, the idea to create a book that's super relevant, super interesting, and documents an era that is so far gone. So I gave you the time. What is the most important thing in surf photography?
Well, yeah, like you were just referring to, I think when you look back historically from the earlier surf photography that's done till now, it's the fact that all of these people have been out there in the world shooting this culture. And so all of these moments, these pivotal moments in surfing history have been captured over time because everyone has been in the field and shooting in different ways. So you have photographers like Brian Bielman and Krista Funk, and everybody's perspective is unique. Again, like some of those people are documenting all those moments, like Krista Funk from the water, and so she's capturing like the last historic eddy for 10 hours swimming and giving these under the wave views and vantage points looking straight up. There was one shot that she took of Cole Christensen kind of falling from the sky, right? And I have that same shot. I lucked out and I got that same shot from land. And so I have a 30-foot span of whitewater in the foreground, looking past that to the wave behind, and Cole Christensen like just releasing and kind of skydiving through the air, right? But my perspective in that is again different than hers. But the point is that moment is now kind of ingrained in this time, and so that's why I appreciate everyone who's out there doing what they do, and shooting places globally all over the world and all these swells, and it gives us all the ability to kind of sit back at our computers or phones and escape and experience and feel these moments because they've been brought to us.
So things that the AI cannot do, the dream. At least
That's it. That's it.
what the book added to you? Like a person that has been portrayed in the book looks at the book and say, "Yeah, that's my story. I'm there. I look good, whatnot." A person that reads the book dreams about the stories that you're telling, and photography and the description and whatnot, the stories. But what this book brought to you personally, not as a profession?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think about that quite a lot. And I think the answer is that, well, it starts off way back when I was a little kid, because I started going to the North Shore of Oahu the year I was born. And my dad and his brother and a friend of theirs bought a small place over at Malaikahana Beach, which is just kind of south of Turtle Bay, right in the town of Kahuku. And so that's where I started to fall in love with the North Shore. I've been going there. Literally, it's the only place that I've spent part of every year of my life. And so I've always had a familiarity with it. It's always felt like home to some degree. But it wasn't until this book project that the relationships that I had with the North Shore landscape, the intimacy of understanding and knowing the waves, the way they break, the currents, the people in the lineup. The book has brought and deepened my relationship with all of those things dramatically. And so the thing that I love most about the book is I finally feel like I have gotten to know the North Shore in the way that I always wanted to.
Nice. Beyond that, beyond the book or within the book, I I don't know how you would like to answer. Was there one particular meeting with a person there in Hawaii that really like changed your life, or you are particularly stoked, if we use the surf terminology, of having had the opportunity to experience? Was there one guy with the respect of all the others? So I said beyond the book, even that really like made a difference to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I think about any photography project, whether I'm traveling internationally or whether it's close to home, I've always believed that the way into a place, to a culture, is through the people, right? Through the people that live it and know it every day. And so my goal every time I go to a new place is try to establish trust in a few people and then have them show you their world, right? Well, I got lucky because I grew up going to Hawaii, and so when I decided that I wanted to formalize the book project, I connected with a really great friend of mine whose name is Mike Peach, and Mike Peach is one of my favorite surfers. He's exceptional in the water. He's an incredible all around waterman. He is a name that everyone who is paddling into big waves knows, but most people outside of that community wouldn't necessarily know. He's not a name like, Mark Healy or Emily Erickson, or he's part of that community. but outside of it, again, not many people would know who he was. When I thought about shooting this project, I met up with Mike and I just said, "Hey, would you have interest in helping me try to pull together the first shoot for this book?" And he said, "Yeah, well, let's do it." And so he connected me with Cole Christensen. That's where 2/3 of the portraits were shot, in his barn in Wailua. And then he helped to gather this group of surfers who showed up for that initial shoot. And so with the first day, we had, Mark Healy and Jock Sutherland and Ben Wilkinson and Dusty Middleton. And I mean, the list was rich and deep, and there was a lot of heavy water energy in that room. Really remarkable. To answer your question, Mike Peach comes to mind as that person because he was the catalyst for this entire project. Had that first shoot not happened, I never would have gained traction. And so all of these people who showed up that day trusted me because they trusted Mike. And then I went home and processed these images of each of them and came back and gave all of those surfers prints. And so then they had the prints, and then they were looking at these going, okay, this project feels a little more real now. Who else are you interested in having be part of the project? So I would sit down with Mark Cunningham and he would pick up the phone and just start calling people. And then next thing you know, the day after, Dave Wassel shows up. Like it was a really organic process, but it all started with one relationship, which was that relationship with Mike Peach.
The first word that comes to my mind is good karma.
Huh.
It's like yeah, because you see, we go back to what we said at the beginning. Like the community that gets together to help somebody.
Right.
In this case, is let them let you photography them,
Yeah.
and that as easy in my sims is such a damn difficult thing, as I guess, especially in the North Shore of Hawaii,
Yeah.
especially among those legendary names.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who go to the North Shore claiming that they want to do something, make a movie, shoot a project. And I remember Mark Healy, after the project was finished, he just said, I can't believe that you actually completed this, that you pulled it off. He said, you wouldn't know how many people come to us wanting to do something, having big ideas, but then there isn't the follow through. And so I think a lot of the time the hesitation for any of those guys to participate is because everybody wants a piece of them, but oftentimes the energy is put into showing up for the shoot or whatever, and then on the back end, nothing ever really happens. And so as soon as I had photographed 20 people, then 30, then 50, then 80, I was feeling a lot of pressure at that point because at that stage, I knew I needed to deliver, but I also didn't have a publisher yet. And so there was still a lot of unknowns. Like, okay, in my mind, yeah, this is happening, but I still have to have a lot of pieces fall together in order to deliver. And yeah, it's kind of a nerve-wracking thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because also today, okay, your name obviously is very well known, but it's not easy, I guess, to once you have a final product to just rank like first list of 10 publishers, because then you want the good ones, right? So
Sure.
and say, hey, I have a book about North Shore, are you interested to publish it? And I guess there is quite a lot of people coming up with ideas and going to publish it. So
Right. Right. And timing is everything. I mean, I think I mentioned a little bit ago, I have my list of publishers that I was hopeful to work with, but ultimately you just need one. And in the end, Damiani, of all the people that I reached out to, Damiani was the only publisher that said, let's do this. And the beauty of that is that they were the right publisher for this book, because their focus in making books, they make art books. They make books that look like photographers' portfolios. They're beautiful. The printing is, like, as you know, Italian made printing is as good as it gets. There's an attention to detail that I admire and love. And they gave me the freedom to do it the way that I wanted. So I was able to lay the whole book out with a good friend of mine, Steve DeBrun, who's a designer. And we did this together. Neither of us had ever published a book on our own. And so we just figured it out. We had a great team. We ended up with, as you know, Steve Hawk and Bruce Jenkins as part of the team, who added all of the words and stories to the book. And in the end, it's a reflection of all these amazing people who gave time to this thing. You know, I orchestrated it, but I needed Steve DeBrun for the design. I needed these incredible stories that Steve and Bruce were able to kind of come up with through their interviews. And then I needed the publisher, and I mean, the list is long. There were,
I guess.
20, 30 people, that important people involved in the process. And everyone was dedicated to getting it to the finish line. It was an amazing thing. I just, one quick little note back to what you were talking about just the notion of having things just happen, you know, almost, it was like the book happened organically, but things fell into place. And I remember it was Nathan Fletcher at one of the opening ceremonies for the Eddy. After I had shot his portrait, it was a year later, and he said, "Hey, how's the hunt for the publisher going for the book?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm actually in it right now. I just finished the proposal, and now I'm starting to send it out." And he said, "It shouldn't be that hard. You should find someone who loves this project, understands everything that you're putting into it, and it should just happen naturally. You're going to find somebody." And I reflected back on that for the next year or so while I was looking for a publisher. And sure enough, you know, I'd spent all this time creating this 25-page book proposal, sending it out to Rizzoli and everyone else. And in the end, I had seen a book that was titled Mongolia, and I called, I basically just figured out who published it. It was Damiani. And I sent them an email and said, "Hey, I have this project I've been working on for 15 years. It's about surf culture on the North Shore. I'd love to share more about it with you." And the next day they reached out literally and said, "Yeah, we want to hear more." And that was, and so that's how it all ended, you know. And again, you never know. Like, you just, right, you put your foot out the door and you just keep trying. And so when I look back on that conversation with Nathan Fletcher, I was like, well, that's exactly what he was talking about. Just finding the right people.
Sometimes it takes a lot of time, and sometimes never. Sometimes it's just like super quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, I have two questions, maybe three. Two.
Yeah.
So first, since we're talking about Hawaii, I know you travel the world also for not only surf photography, right? But
Yeah.
many other things. But what was the craziest surf destination? I keep it on the surf, right? Destination that you had the possibility to visit, like maybe the wildest, the craziest, the unusual one. Where did the travel?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that there are no crazier moments that you're going to find than off of the North Shore.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'm having flashbacks of being on jet skis and shooting, you know, outer reefs on certain days and wondering what the heck I was doing out there. But yeah, I mean, the shoot that I really enjoyed the most that was outside of the US was in Indonesia, and it was in Kandui. And so it was, yeah, it was just a week of really amazing conditions in a place that felt so incredibly remote. And I think the remoteness of it is what added so much of the excitement. So yeah, that's the thing that kind of comes to mind. Probably not as harrowing as you were hoping for,
Oh,
but
no. I was not expecting any crazy destination. I mean, maybe, but going back to you as a surfer, what was your first dream surfboard that you were able to surf and to have? And in which part of your life you were able to get at the beginning, when you were starting surfing, or adult,
yeah.
or
Well, it's kind of interesting. Even though I've been going to the North Shore since I was tiny, I didn't spend enough time over there, every year as a kid to really pick up surfing like too much. I loved the water, and I begged my dad every day to go to Sandy Beach and to Makapu. And so I was in the water body surfing a lot, and then started boogie boarding. And I remember jumping off, the point way at the outside of Makapu on a big day, and I was too small to be out there. And my dad takes off on a wave, and I'm sitting out there with this big Hawaiian guy. He's like, "Where's your dad go?" He's like, "He's just leaving you out here?" I was like, "Yeah." And and that guy ended up getting me into a wave that day that was the wave that probably hooked me for life. So I grew up in Colorado, in Denver, and I took a road trip we drove all the way down to the tip of Baja, down to Cabo. And on the way to that trip, we were in an old beater Suburban with a group of kids, and we stopped in Southern California. And the very first longboard that I bought was a Harbor.
oh,
And so that was the first board that I ever had. I still have that board. The thing's been broken in half twice. I've repaired it. It's sitting down at, in a place down in Mexico, but I can still pick that thing up and go out and have immediate flashbacks. The first more gun shaped board that I ever bought was a Roger Hines, and I bought that when I was living in San Francisco and surfing Ocean Beach a lot.
wow.
And then I had a Chuck Andrus board that was more like the first board that was more of a shortboard shape. And actually, interestingly, a week and a half or two ago, there was a good south swell on Oahu, and I happened to be over there and was surfing a place called Big Lefts, and Chuck Andrus paddled out into the lineup. And he's in his 70s. The guy's looking so fit. Oh my gosh. And he was out there on his 10-foot board, just paddling into these beautiful 6 to 8 foot waves. And so anyway, I took the time just when I was sitting there to say, one of the first boards I ever bought was one of your boards. I still have it.
Nice.
So those were the three boards that kind of come to mind as memorable boards. Yeah, and so I was doing these talk story events too at Turtle Bay for the book, and the very first one was with myself and Jock Sutherland and Mark Healy, and Roger Hines, the shaper, was there that night. And so I was telling him that evening about the fact that the first gun I ever bought was his gun in San Francisco.
Those are the things that only Hawaii can give to people, right?
Right.
Exactly. Meetings, unexpected meetings, but very, very meaningful. I don't want to sound cliche, because this obviously is a question that everybody asks to photographers or people that have had success in their life. But which advice would you give to a young photographer today? Like, let's say a 14 years old guy or girl that takes a camera and decides to become a surf photographer or an ocean photographer.
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice is photograph the things that you love. In my case, I had a mentor at Art Center who helped me along. And, there were a lot of people during the school process who were trying to build portfolios all the way through. And he said, just keep shooting, shoot, all the way to the end. And 2 weeks before school got out, before I graduated, we went into this place called the Cove. It's where you photograph cars. And he said the night before, he said, gather all your favorite images from the last 3 years, and we're going to spread them out on the floor, which we did. And he climbed up on a ladder with his laser pointer. And he said, I'm just going to start pointing at pictures, and wherever I point, you put them in those piles. And so he's pointing at all the shots and directing me all over the place. And I ended up with a stack of portraits and a stack of fashion, and a stack of adventure and a stack of sports. And at the end, he said, I always thought you were going to be a fashion photographer. He said, but after going through this, I think adventure and kind of sports, environmental portraits is probably the direction you should go.
Okay.
And so that night I took all of those photos home. I had portfolios already made. I put them in the book and brought it back to him the next day. And that was my portfolio. That was the portfolio that got me out the door and ended up getting the first jobs. And I'm probably getting off track right now.
No, perfect. It's very effective way, to show you what you really love from what you portray, right?
Yeah, I think in the end, the reality is that the portfolio that I ended up having, they were photographs of people that I really enjoyed being around in locations that I loved going to, doing the things that I also did on the side, because I grew up doing a lot of sports. And so in the end, I started to get hired to do all of the things that I loved. And so I didn't end up getting hired to shoot a bunch of stuff that I didn't really want to spend my time doing. And so I was able to shoot a lot of content that was meaningful, even though those jobs were hired jobs.
Yeah.
So back to the original question, I think shoot what you love and just shoot a lot.
Yeah, fantastic. We're gonna finish our interview with a short Q&A session. So please answer the first thing that comes up to your mind. Everyone answer to the same question. So the best surfboard that you ever rode?
That first one, the Harbor 9.6 longboard.
It's
what got me into surfing.
It's a love story. Favorite of all time?
I has to be Jock Sutherland. Jock Sutherland is the guy that I will always respect because he keeps me motivated. And the idea of surfing in my 70s is something that I aspire to, and he's the guy who helps me realize that it's possible. And he shook the Duke's hand.
Yeah.
And now everybody on the North Shore wants to shake his. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Very important person in the surf culture and the surf history, and definitely great piece of history in Hawaii for Hawaiians.
Right.
Personal question: your favorite song or kind of music?
Favorite song? It's funny because I have lots of songs that appeal to different parts of my life, but I always think that if I came back in another life and could choose what I wanted to do, I'd choose to be a musician, I think.
Okay.
And so with that in mind, I would say Stevie Ray Vaughan, Little Wing.
Okay.
I think he's just the absolute best guitarist that ever walked the planet.
Okay, fantastic. So in a new life, some Italian guy will interview you on a rock podcast.
Yeah, or I'll be some flamenco guitarist over in Europe. Who knows?
Maybe. We'll never know. But favorite surf spot, if it's not a secret?
Yeah, my favorite stretch of coast to surf is Lonnie's to Chun's. And so I love Holton's and Jocko's and Lonnie Kid.
Yeah, from Jock Sutherland to Jocko's, I think is a good.
Yeah, it's repeating itself.
Favorite shaper of all time? I think you answered me maybe already, but.
Well, because I say Harbor, yeah. I did a project with a shaper, Nick Palandrani, and he's a name that, well, if you live in Santa Cruz, Capitola area, everybody knows him. His companies are GP Surfboards and Source. And we did a project back in 2006, 7, and 8 where we put my photographs into surfboards. And so we had a series of 15 boards, all different shapes. It kind of covered this historical timeline. So we had big, long 10-foot, boards with D-shaped fins, and we had step ups, and we had twin fins, but each of those boards had a photograph on it that covered either the entire deck or underside of the board. And in that time, I got to know him well. He's just an amazing guy, but he also has the ability to shape pretty much anything you want. And so we shaped balsa boards, and I mean, I would come to him and say, "Hey, this is the board that I want," and he would just do it. And the fact that he could pull it all off so beautifully was well, it made the project. Put it that way.
Last question, since we talk about family quite a lot today, I'd like to know your best relationship advice.
My best relationship advice.
That can be relationship with romantic, friends, ocean, surfboard,
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, listen. I think if you're a good listener, that helps any relationship. And then the other thing that I would say is show up.
Sure.
Be there for the people that matter most, and they will be there for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Thank you, Mr. Cannon, for being on with me today. I look forward to talk to you very soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Hi, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our today's episode. If you want to know more about us, please follow www.thetempleofsurf.com and all our social media. Mahalo!